SpongeBob SquarePants first aired as a preview on May 1st, 1999, following the Kids' Choice Awards. It would go on to officially premiere on July 17th of that same year, and I remember sitting there May 1st after just watching the Kids' Choice Awards, because of course that's what you did as a kid. They told you it's an award show and you get a choice as a kid. I was a kid, I was 4, almost 4.5, I felt like a man. And I was excited for this new show. I'd seen all the promos and commercials and whatnot, and those had me a little, intrigued to see what was coming. So I tuned in. I watched it. Then that first episode aired, Help Wanted, and I, along with the rest of the world, was introduced to this character, SpongeBob SquarePants, along with, of course, Patrick Star, Mr. Krabs, Squidward Tentacles, and of course, a smell. A kind of smelly smell. A smelly smell that smells smelly. But anyway, I was immediately sold on this yellow sea sponge character. The show itself felt sort of like a more fun Rocko's Modern Life to me. The main character was more bright and relatable, really, to me, than Rocko was. But why? SpongeBob had a job. That was the whole point of the first episode. He clearly wasn't 4 like I was. But what is it about this character that made me and seemingly every other child on Earth feel so immediately attached to him? And why now, 18 years later, have so many of those same kids grown up to say they feel a little more like Squidward? Well, to begin with, SpongeBob, when he's well written at least, is full of childhood innocence and optimism that we can really relate to when we are young and filled with all kinds of excitement about even little things. In a very raw, basic way, he is us when we were kids. He's happy, he's hyper, he's naive, he's a little annoying, but he has so much fun and we have fun with him. He doesn't even annoy us most of the time when we're young. He annoys Squidward and he might annoy our parents sometimes. But most of the time we were right there with him, having fun, watching him blow bubbles and catch jellyfish and flip burgers for some reason. He was just having fun like most any other kid would be most of the time. He really just didn't annoy us, he annoyed Squidward. Just like how, as a kid, you might annoy some adults sometimes, but in your mind, you're just having some fun. You don't notice any sort of accidental damage you might be doing, and a lot of times, it might not be too big of a deal. But you generally don't notice when you're just getting a little bit in the way, or just being a little bit too loud. And SpongeBob never noticed that either. He was just like us, sort of getting in trouble and not knowing why, and sometimes not even noticing that he was in trouble. And on top of that, SpongeBob's always looking at the bright side, and not just because he's yellow, but because that's part of his character, and that's a lot like how we are to begin with, starting off in life. A lot of times we are more optimistic about life when we're young. The pessimism tends to come a little later when we get a little more Squidwardy or Squidwardian. But it's just a good feeling to always have someone pointing out the bright side of everything to you. And that's more or less what SpongeBob likes to do. Even when he gets upset, he has Patrick to pick him up or something. He doesn't stay down for long most of the time. When the bright side does need to be pointed out to him, he generally snaps right to it. And there are times when he gets down in the dumps. We know that he does cry a lot. But most of the time when he cries, it's for a pretty dumb reason. And a lot of times that's sort of how we are as kids. We don't really get upset about some big stuff sometimes, but a lot of times it's something that at the end of the day isn't really too important. That is, when we do get upset about things. A lot of times we can take some things in stride that you might not expect a kid to be able to. But then we might drop a lollipop and cry for 20 minutes. Things are weird like that. And that's how SpongeBob is in a lot of ways. By and large, he is a reflection of our childhood selves. Now, obviously, that's relatable when you are your childhood self, but even as an adult, it's a good feeling to be able to reconnect with those initial basic feelings of, as I said, the innocence, the joy, the excitableness. It can be fun. It's why many adults watch cartoons to this day that they've been watching for decades on decades. It's a good way to not only remember your childhood, but reconnect with it. And SpongeBob, of course, is not just a cartoon that many now adults watched in their childhoods, but as a character, he embodies that entire experience. But, of course, as time goes on, we get older, we mature, We get jobs, we get bills and responsibilities. Suddenly we can't ignore things that we could when we were kids, and we just start feeling like mediocre clarinet players. Yeah, once the shroud of childhood is lifted, we often start to understand Squidward's personality a little bit better. We suddenly start getting more irritated a little more easily. We start valuing our relaxation more than ever. We start becoming, all the parents and adults that we saw our whole lives, and all of a sudden we understand it. I'm only 22, but my tentacles ache just like Squidward's. We might not be as much of a jerk as Squidward can be sometimes, but the older we get, the more we can sort of understand where he's coming from, why he's so annoyed by SpongeBob and just life in general, why all he wants to do is just relax, have some tea, paint himself. He's just taking paint selfies and play his clarinet. He just wants to relax. When you're a kid, you don't really think about relaxing until you just fall asleep. But the older you get, the more tired you suddenly feel. Your energy just isn't there all the time like it used to be. And even in maybe high school or middle school, you just come home and you just want to take a break. You just want to relax. Just take a nap before you get to your homework or something. Just have some sort of a break, And there was a time back when I was young that I used to hate jazz. I couldn't stand it for whatever reason. I didn't know why I hated it then. I don't know now. But I couldn't stand it. And then suddenly I got a little older and then I thought, this isn't my favorite, but this is cool. I like this. I can sit back and listen to some Kelby G like Squidward. Or maybe Kenny G because I'm a human. But same thing. And it's weird. Suddenly you just start getting a little more refined maybe. Now this is maybe more of an individual thing, case by case, but I suddenly want to go to museums, and that's not so weird because I am an artist, but sometimes I just want to take some time to enjoy some sort of performance art or some sort of more refined version of fun, and then go back home and watch some cartoons. But still, there's some sort of weird transition that happens at some age as you just grow older and just stop being a kid, really. And even if you don't enjoy certain things that are stereotypical adult, like freeform jazz and whatnot, you might have some sort of appreciation for them. It might not be your favorite, you might not want to listen to it on your own, but you might hear it and say, I see why people like this, or maybe I can get into this eventually, or I understand this for a little bit, or I can see myself understanding this in the future. And when you're a kid, you might not think you'll ever get it, and you don't want to. But it's a weird thing that happens. All of a sudden, you understand why Squidward and people like Squidward can like such corny seeming things. And it's entirely possible that you won't ever totally like it or get it or prefer it, really. But for some reason, you might just all of a sudden appreciate it, or appreciate that other people appreciate it. You start getting perspective on things like that. It's weird. Things are just weird as you get older. You're not trying to start liking different things necessarily. You might, which is cool. But a lot of times you just grow. Even your taste buds change. You have a different taste in all kinds of different things, and all of a sudden you get where Squidward's coming from a lot of times. It might not be anything you're ever going to just throw yourself into, but yeah. No, I see you, Squiddy. I see you. You get it. And that's one of the great things about the show. There's so many different personalities and characters that you might not entirely get or like that much at one point, but you might like them more later. And we all know that there's certain jokes that you don't get immediately that you'll get later. Things like that. That you can keep watching the show and keep appreciating different things about it. And you might start off as SpongeBob and end up as Squidward, or maybe you were always a combination of the two, or maybe you're more of a Patrick, or Sandy, or a Plankton, or Mr. Krabs, or a Pearl, or a Fred, or a Tom. And that's the thing. There's so many different characters in this show. There's so many personalities, so many different things to latch on to. Something for everybody at pretty much every age, really. Even grandparents like cartoons and SpongeBob, and it's really fascinating for me to look at sometimes. SpongeBob himself really is sort of an exaggerated version of our childhood innocence and excitement, and joy and tears and are personalities that a lot of us share. And it's great when you're a kid, and it's also great when you're not a kid anymore. You can sort of reconnect with your childhood and how you felt back then. And then you might look at Squidward and all of a sudden you have that appreciation. You say, you know what, man? My tentacles ache too. Well, thanks for watching. I don't know at this point if this is going to be the first video on the channel, but it is definitely the first one recorded. So I appreciate you tuning in, and I see you guys next time.